My dad smashed my 4-year-old daughter's jaw for talking back. She came crying to me, saying, "Mom, Tina was talking bad and kicking me in the stomach." When I confronted my sister about her daughter's behavior, she shouted, "Well, your daughter doesn't just deserve her jaw getting smashed, but the whole face beaten." Mom laughed. "That's what you get for being completely useless as a parent." Dad said, "Maybe now your daughter will learn to keep the gutter mouth shut forever." Uncle agreed, "Finally, someone's teaching her about real-life consequences." Aunt nodded, "Some kids just don't learn until they get hit hard enough." I stood silent and took my daughter. They had no idea what was coming. My name is Nicole Mitchell, and this is the story of how my own family crossed a line they could never uncross, and how I made sure they paid for it in ways they never saw coming. The whole nightmare started at what was supposed to be a simple family gathering at my parents' house. My daughter, Gina, who just turned 4 last month, was playing with her cousin, Tina, who's 6. I was in the kitchen helping my mom prepare dinner when I heard Gina crying from the living room. Not the usual crying from a scraped knee or hurt feelings, but the kind of desperate, terrified wailing that makes every mother's blood run cold. I rushed into the living room to find Gina on the floor holding her face with my father Richard standing over her with his hands still raised. The sight that greeted me will haunt me for the rest of my life. Gina's little face was already swelling, her jaw clearly displaced and blood was trickling from her mouth. She was trying to speak through her sobs, but the words came out garbled and painful. "What the hell happened here?" I screamed immediately, dropping to my knees beside Gina. My father, a man who'd always been quick to anger, but had never laid a hand on any of the grandchildren before, stood there with his chest puffed out like he was proud of what he'd done. "She was talking back and being disrespectful," he said coldly. "Someone needed to teach her some manners." Through Gina's tears and obvious pain, she managed to whisper to me, "Mom, Tina was talking bad and kicking me in the stomach. I just told her to stop, and then Grandpa hit me really hard." My heart shattered into a million pieces. My sweet, innocent 4-year-old daughter, who still believed in fairy tales and thought everyone in the world was good, had just learned the cruelest lesson about trust and family. I gently examined her jaw, and I could feel that it was definitely broken, or at least severely displaced. She needed immediate medical attention. Later during her therapy sessions, Dr. Patricia Williams would help Gina process these traumatic memories properly. But in this moment, all I could focus on was getting her the medical help she desperately needed. But before I could even process what to do next, my sister Jessica, Tina's mother, came marching into the room after hearing the commotion. Instead of showing any concern for Gina, she immediately went on the attack. "Well, your daughter doesn't just deserve her jaw getting smashed, but the whole face beaten," she shouted, her face twisted with an ugliness I'd never seen before. "Tina told me Gina was being mean to her and wouldn't share the toys. Maybe if you actually disciplined your kid instead of letting her run wild, this wouldn't have happened." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My sister, who I'd grown up with, who I'd shared secrets and dreams with, was actually defending the brutal assault of a 4-year-old child. But the horror show was just getting started. My mother, Linda, who I'd always looked up to as the peacemaker of the family, started laughing. Actually laughing while my daughter sat there with a broken jaw, blood on her clothes, and terror in her eyes. "That's what you get for being completely useless as a parent, Nicole," she said between her cruel chuckles. "You've always been too soft on Gina. Look where it's gotten you now." I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare. These were the people who were supposed to love and protect Gina. These were the people I trusted with my daughter's safety. My father wasn't done yet, though. "Maybe now your daughter will learn to keep the gutter mouth shut forever," he said, flexing his hand as if he was proud of the damage he'd inflicted. "Kids these days have no respect. Sometimes you have to knock some sense into them." My Uncle Tom, my mother's brother, who had been watching TV in the corner, nodded approvingly. "Finally, someone's teaching her about real-life consequences. You can't cuddle children, Nicole. The real world is going to be much harder on her than Richard was." And then my Aunt Carol, my father's sister, who I'd always thought was the sweet one in the family, chimed in with her own dose of poison. "Some kids just don't learn until they get hit hard enough. Gina's always been too mouthy for her own good. This will straighten her right out." I stood there in complete shock, holding my injured daughter while my entire family celebrated the fact that a grown man had just brutally assaulted a toddler. The people I'd loved and trusted my entire life had just revealed themselves to be monsters, and they were all looking at me like I was the problem. But I didn't say a word. Not one single word. I just picked up Gina, grabbed her little backpack, and walked out of that house while they all continued their celebration of child abuse. As I carried my broken daughter to my car, I could hear them laughing and talking about how I'd probably finally learned my lesson, too. Gina whimpered in my arms. "Mommy, why did Grandpa hurt me? I was just trying to be nice to Tina." "I don't know, baby," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "But Mommy's going to make sure nobody ever hurts you again." I drove straight to the emergency room where the doctors confirmed my worst fears. Gina's jaw was fractured in 2 places, requiring immediate surgery and wiring. She'd be eating through a straw for 6 weeks, and there was potential for permanent nerve damage. The doctors were horrified when they heard what happened, and they were legally required to file a child abuse report. While Gina was in surgery, I sat in that sterile waiting room and made a decision that would change everything. My family wanted to play games, fine, but they had no idea who they were messing with. I might have been quiet and non-confrontational my whole life, but when it comes to my daughter, I become someone completely different. You see, what my family didn't know is that over the past 5 years, I've been working as a freelance investigative researcher. I built up an impressive network of contacts in law enforcement, social services, and various government agencies. I'd helped expose everything from insurance fraud to tax evasion, and I'd gotten very good at finding information that people thought they'd hidden forever. The first call I made was to Detective Marcus Williams, a contact I'd worked with on several fraud cases. I explained the situation and sent him photos of Gina's injuries that I'd taken at the hospital. He was disgusted and immediately opened an investigation into the assault. But that was just the beginning. While Gina recovered from her surgery over the next few days, I started digging into my family's lives with the same thoroughness I'd use for any professional investigation. And what I found was a gold mine of criminal activity and dirty secrets. Let's start with my dear father, Richard. It turns out that for the past 8 years, he'd been running a cash-only handyman business while collecting disability benefits for a back injury he claimed prevented him from working. I found dozens of photos on his social media accounts showing him doing heavy construction work, lifting massive beams, and operating power tools. I compiled all of this evidence and sent it directly to the Social Security Administration's Fraud Investigation Unit. But that wasn't all. Richard had also been cheating on his taxes in a big way. His cash business had generated over $400,000 in unreported income over the past 5 years. I gathered bank statements, receipts, and testimony from his customers, then packaged it all up for the IRS. Tax evasion on that scale comes with serious prison time. My mother, Linda, the woman who laughed at her granddaughter's broken jaw, had her own secrets. She worked as a nurse at the county hospital, and I discovered she'd been stealing prescription medications and selling them. Through careful investigation over several weeks, I found text message records, bank deposits that corresponded with drug sales, and other evidence of her illegal activities. This evidence went to the DEA, the State Nursing Board, and the hospital's Internal Affairs Department through proper legal channels. My sister Jessica, who thought Gina deserved to have her whole face beaten, was about to get a reality check of her own. She'd been claiming her daughter Tina as a dependent for tax purposes, while Tina was actually living with and being supported by Jessica's ex-husband most of the year. She'd also been collecting welfare benefits by claiming she was a single mother with no income while actually working under the table at 3 different cleaning services. I documented everything and sent it to both the IRS and the State Welfare Fraud Investigation Unit. Uncle Tom, who thought Gina needed to learn about real-life consequences, was about to learn some consequences himself. He'd been running an illegal gambling operation out of his garage, taking bets on everything from football games to horse races. I gathered evidence of this operation, including financial records and testimony from participants.